I'm ready.
Well, you got to kick it.
Welcome to Hardheaded Podcast. I'm your host, Chet Sears, as always with Matt Amos and Troy Three-Shot Trussell. Really excited today because we have a special guest with us,
Yes.
Richard Rierson. Fantastic that you're here with us, and I'm guessing that most of our audience doesn't know you.
Yeah, probably right.
I'm really excited to make that introduction because there's a lot of great content that you have been producing for almost a decade in podcast world.
Yeah.
When we'll get into that as we talk, but just from a things to have in your toolkit, Richard can really provide a whole lot on career, life, leadership, everything. So really excited to have you on today and get to know you a little bit better and share you with our audience.
No, it's exciting. You know, it's always fun to connect here in town with fellow podcasters. You know, the power of the podcast. People who don't do it don't understand it, but you guys get it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, so we're here with Richard Rierson, and Richard is a Marine,
Yeah.
and Matt is a Marine.
Yep.
Chet, we have two Marines in the booth here today.
Again.
I mean, I like my odds when it's just me.
You guys are done.
Yeah.
Now we're done. Yeah. And so Richard is also the host and creator of the Dose of Leadership podcast. It's been going on for 8 years, 8.5 years.
8.5, yeah.
And you're up to 490.
About to cross the 500 threshold. Yeah, getting close.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
That's big time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, so when you were thinking about starting it, what kind of led you to leadership and starting that podcast?
Well, the Cliff Notes version is I was a pilot in the Marine Corps from 91 to 01 and got out and hired by American Airlines, what I thought was my dream job.
Yeah.
And June of 2001, did my training that whole summer, finished on September 8th, 2001.
Oh, wow.
And September 11th was my first day.
Oh, wow. That's
my
crazy.
first assignment. And, great, interesting time to join the airlines. And then I was furloughed, 3 weeks later, October of 2001, 20 years ago, this month. And I was thrust into the corporate arena. I had to reinvent myself, right?
Right.
I'm like, what am I going to do? And I had a mindset, like, what am I going to do? All I know how to do is fly airplanes, right? And I was kind of a panicky feeling. I'm like, all I've been doing is, that's what I am. I'm a pilot.
Yeah. And you had your dream job, and now it's not working out.
Now it's gone, right?
Yeah.
And,
Like overnight.
Overnight.
That's crazy.
and I say that, certainly far more people suffered so much more that I just lost my job. Right?
Yeah.
And so I don't mean to make light of that. Like,
No,
woe is
for
me.
sure.
But it was a restructuring and like, okay, what am I going to do? And I just started working in the corporate arena, not flying and working. And what came to me pretty quickly, a short order, is like, I realized that the Marine Corps and flying multi-career airplanes, but particularly the Marine Corps, taught me a lot more about life and leadership that I took for granted while I was in it. Because when you're in it, you're on the same bunch of knuckleheads all the time. You just kind of assume this is what the world is like. And I just assumed, because you see when you're in the Marine Corps, as you know, you're like, God, why is this so effed up? Why is this so, God, they're so stupid. Why do they, that's what,
Right.
And we love, because we like to be miserable as Marines, right? We really like to be miserable. I don't know why.
Yeah.
We just loved it, right? So, but you just kind of get jaded in that sense. Like, God, this is so stupid. I can't wait to get out of this. That was how I felt. I loved the Marine Corps, but I was ready to get away from all the BS.
Yeah.
What we said. But when you get away from it, you realize how much the Marine Corps taught you about life and leadership, like I said. I mean, I just took for granted that, if you're the leader of a team and they screw up, well, that's my fault, right? And that is not the vast majority of what a typical floor manager of any organization thinks. And so this whole idea of accountability, and particularly as an officer, I had some good staff NCOs that I worked for that pulled me aside early on as a young lieutenant and said, hey, look, you take care of us and we're going to take care of you. I'm going to help you become a better officer.
Yeah.
Just listen to me. And he had my interest in heart, right? He had his folks, he's like, okay, I don't want this lieutenant to screw things up for me.
Yeah.
But he did. He knew a great staff NCO in the Marine Corps is taught, look, it's your job really to kind of shape these young officers. And I really appreciated that. And I just kind of took that same mentality into the corporate arena, and I started seeing results. And I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I just said, hey, that guy's a spot welder on the floor. He probably knows better than anybody in this company about what's the best process and the best way.
Yeah.
And I was shocked that a lot of people didn't see that. Particularly owners of organizations were like, no, this is my company. He needs to do as he's told.
He's lower on the pay scale. Yeah.
And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where if I had that mentality in the Marine Corps, I'd be shunned as an officer. You're like, that guy's an idiot.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just kind of took that. And so what I'm getting to in this point is I just kind of took that mentality and I just kind of did what I was taught in the Marine Corps, leaders eat last, and I'm accountable for this, no matter what happens, because as a pilot, even if I'm the aircraft commander and this happened to me, a forklift, as we're loadmaster, put a hole in the fuselage. I wasn't even on the flight line, but it was my fault. I didn't go to the old man and say, yeah, if it wasn't for Troy and his stupid
forklift skills,
my skipper would have gone, well, why did you let him? Because even in that case where that guy put a hole in the fuselage, there were 3 instances when I replayed the tape in my head during the brief and everything. I'm like, man, there's something wrong with, his name wasn't Troy, but I was like, there's something wrong with Troy. Like, he's not, are you with me, Troy? Because I remember saying in the briefing, oh, yes, sir, I'm here.
Yeah.
But we leaned forward and we're like, got a mission to get done. When it all came out, Troy, the loadmaster, had gotten a fight with his wife the night before. His wife said she's going to leave him.
He's out of it.
And he's out of it.
He's not thinking about work.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I heard that and I replayed it. There were 3 times when my gut was telling me something's wrong with Troy. So isn't it my fault, right? As the leader of knowing my people, right? You see what I'm saying? So that in mentality, I don't know what your guys' experience are, but all the places I've worked from an organization, that's foreign. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They would have fired Troy.
Right.
Troy's an idiot.
Yeah.
Get him out of here.
No, I've been in a conference room at one of my previous employers and heard the words from vice president. You just do what you're told.
Yeah.
Talking to a leadership team, you just do what you're told. I'm going to bring in some experts to tell you what to do.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, Matt, how many conversations did you have with those fresh lieutenants coming in, trying to steer them in the good direction, and they just totally ignored you?
Not many.
They were all kind of keyed up to
Yeah, I can only
attention.
think of a couple of instances where an officer came in and was just like, we're going to do it my way, and this is the way. And that one ended up getting relieved in fairly short order. I mean, he was gone.
Yeah.
Because, you've got as an infantry guy, you've got your squad leaders are your tacticians. They're the on-the-ground element that are doing this stuff, and they are responsible for those 12 guys that they're going out with. And then ultimately that platoon commander takes responsibility for everything that happens inside that platoon. I mean, the leadership structure in the Marine Corps is bar none, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the best in the world. It really is.
Well, that's because, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've had a few Marines in my reporting structure before, and they're all the way down to like one person over 3 people, right? I mean, they have like a structure that breaks down to where everybody, it doesn't take long to be leading somebody else, even if it's just 2 or 3 others.
Well, and you always have to be prepared to take the job of the guy ahead of you as well.
So to his point, which I loved about the Marine Corps, and again, took for granted, it's like, and we were told these things over and over again as officers. Again, I wasn't enlisted prior, but they're like, this is not a boss-subordinate relationship. This is a teacher-scholar relationship. You are teaching them to take your job. Every waking moment, every way is to take that next guy. I should be teaching the platoon sergeant to take my job.
Yeah.
It makes sense, right? It's a combat organization. So if I'm carrying the flag and I get shot,
Somebody needs to pick it up.
Someone has to pick the flag up, and they better not be freaking out how to hold the flag, right? So they need to know what it means, and it makes perfect sense, and it goes all the way down to the last guy, the smallest fire team, right?
Yeah. Well, and that carries over in the corporate world just because people are leaving, right? Whether they're leaving for, reasons that they shouldn't have to leave for, or totally valid reasons. It's a great place to work, but I've got other opportunities or family things that I'm going. And a lot of times there's a void that's left, and it ends up getting picked up. I've learned in my 22 years of working that nobody is irreplaceable. Like
that's right.
The ship is going to still sail no matter who isn't there. The company will find a way. It may not be as good. And there may be a lot of things that are dropped, a lot of things that don't go like they should. And typically what I've seen, it's the people that are downhill or your customers that get impacted negatively when that happens. Yeah. But at the same time, if you're not training those folks, you're going to have an impact on other people. Yeah. But if you do train them, your goal, your mission, if it's delivering a product to a customer, that's still going to go out the door, and it's not going to be interrupted as much.
I got two stories that I think that really drives home, and it'll get to I know you asked the question, like, how did I start the podcast?
That was great.
Right?
That's good.
This is all
good.
I promise I'll get to that point. But really, the first one really hit me where the lessons of the Marine Corps were so valuable to me is when I started this first company, and the first job that I had was a shipping supervisor. I've never done shipping and receiving, but I mean, I get the gist of it, right? Mm-hmm. You pull orders in the night, you box things up, wrap it up, truck comes in, pulls in, load it up, and it goes.
Yeah,
I get it. And so they needed a new supervisor for the shipping and receiving. And I said, great. Okay, I got to do something. I got to get, food on the table for my wife and kids. So I start there and I show up like in, the typical dorky Marine lieutenant, wear the khaki Dockers and the JCPenney collared polo shirt and my short haircut, and I walk out on the floor literally like I walked on the set of Sons of Anarchy, right? I mean, like beard's twice as long as
like
you,
that.
just like that, you know? Tattoos and,
fresh meat. Yeah.
And they're just looking, and I'm looking like a dork, right? And I'm walking out there and they're just looking at me like, who is this guy? And like, why do we need a supervisor anyway? Looking at me with all this kind of skepticism. And there was a guy in there, his name was John. They called him Big John because he was. I mean, he was 6'5", a beard twice as long as yours, black. He had sunglasses on, a do-rag on his head, 2 teardrop tattoos right here,
Nice.
Harley vest, live to ride to live, all that kind of stuff. Just looked mean as hell. And they're like, hey, my name's Richard. Nice to meet you guys. And I just, I got a lot to learn here, and just let me know what you guys need. And the Big John goes, he's sitting there like this with the sunglasses on. He's like, what do you mean, what do we need, college boy? You just said that, right? I'm like, oh, geez.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I said, look, and I think initially I went out there and part of me, my ego wanted to say, hey, I was a pilot in the Marine Corps and this and that, nobody cares,
right.
Nobody cares, and that's one thing the Marine Corps taught me. Is like this, like they don't care anything if, you're the captain of the rugby team or who cares.
Yeah.
Until they know that you care about them, right? That's the old adage. And I just said, look, I got a lot to learn. I didn't think I'd be here. I thought I was going to be somewhere else, but I'm here to learn. You guys are the experts here, not me. I'm just here to remove the big rocks for you. That's exactly what I said. And he goes, oh, since you're saying that, he goes, I want a magnetic dry erase board. Just like right off that.
Yeah.
I said, what? I said, they make a magnetic? What is that? And he's like, dry erase board.
Yeah.
They got it down there at Staples. It's like $75. It's about this big, and it comes with 100 little rectangle magnets. I've been wanting one for a month. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'll consider it done, but can I tell you, why do you need it? And he says, well, he goes, this was a new factory. It was brand new. And their old factory had 3 or 5 shipping receiving doors. This one had 20. Mm-hmm. He goes, my problem is, my third shift guys are pulling loads all night. And behind each door, they're putting maybe 2 or 3 different separate orders behind each door. Walmart guy comes in at 7 a.m. Hey, I'm here to pick up load XYZ. I don't know where load XYZ is, so my guy's walking the floor.
Like with a bill of lading, trying to find part numbers.
Trying to find, looking at these little 8.5, 11 sheets of paper, looking for load XYZ. He goes, if I had a magnetic dry erase board, I could put 20 little squares up there and for each door, and every time third shift guy puts load XYZ behind door 15, he writes it on the magnet and sticks it up on this magnetic dry erase board. And I'm like, that's brilliant. I love that. Yeah, I'll go get it. He goes, hey, but I was a computer science major. maybe we could make a electronic. And he's like,
Yeah. Keep it simple. Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
I want a effing magnetic dry erase board.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I got it. And so I got it for him. But anyway, about 3.5 months later, and John, who looks mean as hell, he had the biggest heart. Obviously had come from a pretty rough background, been in jail a couple of times, but he was the real leader of that group.
Yeah.
He was the real influence of that group. Mm-hmm. He wasn't recognized as so because he looked the way he did, right? But he cared about his folks. He always showed up on time, did his work, hardest worker you'd ever see. And we got along with, and he was kind of like the platoon sergeant in the Marine Corps, right? Mm. He was my platoon sergeant. And about 3.5 months in, he said, you're the first guy that's ever asked me in 15 years what I needed. And that floored me. Mm-hmm. And again, I don't tell that story to say, oh, look how great I was, but more of how sad it is. Like, why wouldn't you you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's what the Marine Corps really taught me, that, it ain't about you. I remember even going to the infantry school that I had to go to before I went to flight school. They said, it ain't about you. It's always about them. They just drum that in your head. This isn't about you. It's about them. Mm. And I just thought that was normal.
Right.
But it's not.
Yeah.
And so my hat's off to the Marine Corps for that. And then the second story was an accountability one. The same company, when I was not shipping and receiving, I was in part of the purchasing and international operations department. And I hired a gal who was supposed to be my assistant, but man, she was way smarter than me.
Yeah.
And I delegated all the purchasing to her. It was my signature on it, but I just delegated the decision-making and the procurement to her. Long story less long, I was in China, and we're doing our big ordering in February for the spring push, and we ordered the same thing twice. So in other words, we double ordered.
Yeah.
It's a $137,000 mistake. Mm. And I'm like, oh.
That hurts.
So I came back, and everybody was like, what are we going to do with all this extra product, right? And it literally, when we found it, the product was literally on a slow boat from China, right? So it was ours. Mm-hmm. Couldn't stop the factory, couldn't get it back, no refunds, right?
It's coming.
And so they were all mad, and they were having an emergency meeting. What are we going to do? And I remember they were sitting there saying, how could she be so dumb? They were saying things like that. We should get rid of her. We should fire her.
Yeah.
And I remember being so pissed. And again, not me standing up nobly. I was more of like, I didn't care anymore. I was like, if you're going to fire anybody, fire me. Because whose name is on the purchase order?
Right.
And it was mine. I said, I'm accountable for that, not her. So if you want to fire somebody, you're firing me. I'll leave right now. And the whole room just got quiet. And again, I hate even telling the story because it makes like I'm this hero.
Yeah.
It's more as like I just didn't give a flip anymore.
Well, that's the accountability part from the Marine Corps, right? It's like,
right. And that's the power of accountability, again, that the Marine Corps kind of instilled in you. It's not easy, and I've messed this up. Don't get me wrong. I've pointed fingers when I shouldn't have. We all have, right? We haven't taken full accountability. But the moment that you do, it shuts the whole room up. It's like I like to tell people, because nobody knows because nobody does it, right? Nobody says, you know what? I screwed up.
Well, those are moments you see in, movies,
Yeah, I had one. It went a little different. It kind of started out the same way. Manufacturing environment. I was in quality. Customer got a product and it was missing a screw. A product that has 125 screws. Right. One of them was missing. And, what kind of an idiot can't put all the screws in a product? All the comments started coming. And I started out working on an assembly line. So I know what it's like to do something 480 times, like a job, 480 times in 8 hours. And in that job, you've got to put on, 25 different things here with this tool, and you got to go do this with that tool. And, I understand how that works. And I kind of took that example. It was like, well, okay, let's fire them for missing one screw out of, 120 screws on 400 different products in a day. They missed one. So if we're going to hold that standard, this was an internal discussion to our company. If we're going to hold that standard, I got an email from you last week that said, can you look at this attachment? But there wasn't an attachment on the email.
Right.
you forgot to put the attachment on there.
Right. That's good.
And they're like,
Yeah.
like it's a simple, and actually you have if you write the word attachment in your email, it actually, a pop-up box comes up, says, did you mean to attach something here? And you click, yeah, okay. And then you still send it. Like we even had some error, not proofing, but we had something to kind of help remind you of what you're supposed to do. I said, so if we're not going to start firing
Right.
people for making the minorest of mistakes in the office, we don't need to be having that kind of conversation about people that are literally using their hands all day, and have more opportunities to fail unless we give them the appropriate tools. And that was, they were like, never thought of it like that.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's if you're just doing piecework, your piecework sometimes at a desk is sending emails, and you don't even do that right, and nobody's talking about firing you.
Yeah. That's why I say accountability shuts the room up.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, yeah. And going back to that story, long term, what happens? She actually eventually gets a promotion, takes over that whole, what I was doing, she takes that over. I move on to something else with more responsibility, And every time I've seen that happen where people have stepped up and take accountability, it's frightening as hell, but usually something good happens from it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But so things like that started happening in the corporate arena.
Yeah.
Like, and I was working at 3 different companies, and I'm seeing this and that. And I was eventually at a hotel company, and I was the VP of ops, and these property managers would come in for 6 weeks of training. And at the end of the 6 weeks, while they trained them here, the last week, I would spend a day with them and just kind of talk impromptu about leadership, tell them stories like I'm telling you, and what my expectations are. I said, when you show up, when there's a tornado coming down in your hotel, or there's a dead body in the room or something like that, you do what you need to do. You don't need to call me, make a decision, and tell me what you did afterwards. My expectation is that you make decisions.
Yeah.
And I would tell these stories, and then they'd get the feedback from at the end of the training, and they said one of their favorite parts of the 6-week training was my little impromptu leadership thing. And so from the nudging of the people that were doing the training, said, you could probably get paid telling these stories. And says, I don't know. So this was 2007. And then I just finally did it. And then, and another Marine, I put up a crappy little website, and I don't know, the universe, however they did it, God, the universe, whatever, and talked a lot about the Marine Corps, had me in my blue, all this hardcore Marine Corps verbiage, you know.
Yeah.
And then another Marine called me, who was the Michigan State Police, head of the Michigan State Police, and he was a prior enlisted Marine, stayed in the Marines for 22 years, was in Vietnam, and now he's running the Michigan State Police. And so, of course, we connected, and he said, hey, I'm looking to do some all-day training with my folks. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. Just, always saying yes, even though I'd never done any full-day training.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And he goes, I go, yeah, what's your budget? And he goes, $8,000. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I can come up with
I
a.
can squeeze that
I think
in.
I can do that. It's a little less than I usually take, but yeah. So anyway, I went and kind of panicked afterwards and got off the phone, and I was like, man, I only got to a presentation is about 30 minutes long. How am I going to turn this into 8 hours?
Right.
And so I called it was a former CEO of the company that I was telling those stories about, and he's a consultant. And I said, what do I do? And he's like, so he helped me. He goes, hey, well, we'll just take these 8 principles that you got,
Expand. Yeah.
and then here we'll do a breakout. And here's a good breakout. His bag of tricks. And he said, we'll do a breakout over here. So when I did that, and I walked out with that $8,000, I'm like, wow, man, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to make all this kind of money. And I think that was the universe's way of going like, okay, this is what it can be like. Now go do the work. And because it's never been that easy since. And and so just kind of did the slog, trying to find clients, trying to get speeches. Really, I just didn't do the training. I was focused on doing keynotes, and then built my own website and learned how to do that. I was proud of that, and I naively thought you build it and they will come, And I was like, hey, why only 8 people showed up my website today?
Yeah.
And
If you build it,
Yeah.
it will come.
Yeah.
Right. And so kind of slogging through the frustration of that. And just one morning I woke up in December 17th, 2012. And I was like, man, how do I get more noticed in this noisy world? And I was looking at my bookshelf and I said, what if I just started talking to these authors? I mean, there's always a bunch of leaders. You go to a bookstore, how many leadership books are there?
Right.
Leadership section in there.
Yeah.
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 And so I did a Google search, like 2013 leadership books, and there's like 150 coming out in the next 6 months. And I'm like, oh,
there's your cast of guests.
right. And so I just started. I literally that day, it was the 17th. I remember it was the 17th of December, and I just emailed 75 emails, just going through. Here's this author. And then I'd go to their website and see if there's a contact form, an email or something. And I would just send, and I'm not making this up, guys. I made up the email as I was sending the first one. Hey, and my first sentence was, I'd love to have you on my brand new podcast called, and I'm like, what do I call it?
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah.
Dose of Leadership.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you. And before I finished the email, I went in to see if there's a URL.
Right.
And there was. And I went and I bought it. And then
click send.
And then I finished the rest of the email.
Yeah, copy paste. Yeah.
I go, I'd love to have a conversation about your whatever new book. I'm launching the show on, and I picked 4 weeks from the following Monday, and it was like this is January 22nd or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm launching January 22nd, 2013. I'd love you to be a guest. A little bit about me, prior Marine Corps officer, blah, 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 blah. It was literally this long, 4 lines. And then I sent it off. And at the end of the day, by 11 o'clock that night, I had 3 responses. One was Gene Kranz, the former flight director of NASA,
Yeah.
And then 2 other authors, the Getting Things Done guy, his name's escaping me now. And then the other one was Bob Berg, the Go-Giver guy. Who?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
just I saw a little clip on that on LinkedIn today, I think. Yeah.
So he's and then Jim Kuzaz, there's actually 4, and Jim Kuzaz was another one, which was one of my favorite books. But anyway, so that started it. And I think, honestly, guys, I sit there, I've never done anything like that before. I think prior, I would have just like procrastinated and overthought it and market research and all this other BS. And when I got those 4 responses from the guys, I'm like, okay, I can't disappoint. It was like,
now
I cannot disappoint.
It was just me
guys.
before.
Right
now it's their names attached to it.
I'm in the game now, yeah.
And then so I what do I do? I had no equipment. I didn't know how to do any of this. And I found some guys that were doing some podcasts. One was a former Army guy, the John Lee Dumas, the Entrepreneurs on Fire, I think his show is. His show was 3 months old at the time. And then...
so he was an expert. He's like, oh my gosh, this guy's been doing
especially
this forever.
Back then, 2013, yeah.
And why is the other guy's name escaping me right now? I'm having a brain freeze. But
only because you're thinking about it.
Yeah, right. It'll come to me. But anyway, there was 2 guys, and I knew about them. I emailed both of them, and they responded right away. And they spent like an hour and a half with me. Have you done this? Have you got a lead magnet? I'm like, no, what are you talking about? What is this? What now?
Yeah.
And
advertising.
And then I ordered the equipment on December 23rd and got it on January 3rd. And I did my first interview on January 6th, and I launched the show with 6 interviews on January 22nd.
Wow.
Nice.
And so in 30 days, I did that from conception to launching. And so that started it. And then at the time, there's only 335,000 active podcasts. Now there's almost 3 million. So it was kind of easy to get noticed in the little podcast nerddom.
Yeah.
And I got new and noteworthy. It was a big deal back then on iTunes or Apple Podcasts now. And it just started snowballing.
Yeah.
And then I got Steve Forbes on probably in April of that year. And then that changed the game. Not so much that a bunch of listeners came on, but my
guest
it was
list.
when I to send an email to ask a guest, if Steve Forbes is on, this guy must be legit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Your emails at that point were, 5 lines. By the way, you would be joining authors and, business leaders like Steve Forbes. Yeah. That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
And the original idea was, how do I get more speaking gigs? And it's turned into something completely different.
Yeah.
The relationships and certainly opportunities, and it certainly has transformed and helped me get more paying gigs. It still does.
Yeah.
But I'd be lying to you when I initially thought you would think if you'd get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of listens in a month, people would be knocking on your door for your services. And that's just not the case, right? You still have to do the work
Yeah.
to build relationships, knock on doors. I don't think you can replace the old fashioned,
Yeah.
least what I'm trying to do, getting coaching clients and everything like that. But I have got the podcast does get me a speaking gig. The speaking gig gives me a chance to get in, meet the CEO, establish a relationship with the CEO. CEO then says, hey, I'd like you to work with us for 6 months or whatever.
So I find it fascinating. I imagine you've learned quite a bit through the people you've talked to.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
you're doing research, you're reading, you're doing backgrounds, and you're getting that. And then you actually have the opportunity to ask them some very deep questions about what drives them to make decisions that they make and do all of this. But I think really what's fascinating to me is your foundation still comes from the Marine Corps.
Yeah,
like that.
For sure.
That is still. You're not talking about, well, Steve Forbes. This is what I learned from this guest. This is what is still coming back to that foundation of leadership that you experienced, saw it demonstrated, saw it trained, saw people go through that training and saw what it could do there.
I never looked at it that way, but you're absolutely right. I mean, you would think of like, oh, well, this show. I mean, every now and then I bring up those stories, but you're absolutely right. The Marine Corps Foundation. I don't think there's a day that doesn't go by that I don't reference it, think about it, give reverence to it, because it was that impactful to me. Again, while I was in it, I didn't recognize it. This is all kind of came afterwards.
Yeah.
It's weird too, because maybe because I talk about it so much, there's a level of, you kind of forget the bad stuff or the screwed up stuff.
Right.
I had the Marine Corps guys that had been an infantry unit that had been to Iraq and Afghanistan multiple times. I mean, there were some guys that had done 3 tours, and they asked me to do out in San Francisco. They'd give a part of their leadership conference, and I was actually the MC. And so I was the MC for the all weekend, and I also gave a keynote. I gave a keynote on the first day. I gave a closing session on the last day. And I gave my typical fare. And what was interesting is that these guys, a lot of them argued with me. Of course, I hadn't been in combat like these guys, right?
Yeah.
And I was in aviation, so a couple from that. But I mean, I wasn't talking like, I didn't say war stories. I was talking like general concepts and this and that. And it was interesting to get, which I again appreciate out of the Marine Corps, because that's where I get that kind of adage. Maybe you've heard it. We talk about it, Troy, on the show. It's not your right to challenge; it's your obligation. I got that from an officer in the Marine Corps. As I had a squadron commander that told us that. They said, it's not your right to challenge me, it's your obligation, with respect, right?
Yeah.
And he was the best leader to work for. And I would talk about things like that. And there's some guys, and it was weird. It was I felt uncomfortable because I felt like, I don't know, I felt like they were more Marines than me, if that made any sense, right? Because they were actually kicking down doors, and I hadn't done that, And they argued with me about some of those principles. Yeah, that doesn't work in the real world, Like they said that during the presentation.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Now, they did it with love. They didn't do it to make me look bad,
Right.
Yeah.
And I actually just pivoted and let's talk about that, right? Because I said, because this is what I see in the corporate world. And these guys have been in the corporate world, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I'm telling you that this is what has paid huge dividends in the corporate arena that no one else is doing. And I got that straight from the Marine Corps. I said, I'm not here to tell you that your experiences and what you experience. You know what I mean? I wasn't trying to negate that, but it was just, I guess only the Marines, they would do that, right? You know what I mean? It's like, because it's not their right to challenge, it's their obligation. They spoke up in the middle.
It would be kind of funny for somebody to challenge you on a subject where they haven't been in the real world, but they're saying it doesn't work in the real world.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
A little ironic, I guess.
Yeah.
Some of these guys, again, some of them I hadn't been through, they were just kind of fed up with the Marine. They were kind of, they were tired because these deployment cycles. I mean, this was in the mid when Iraq and Afghanistan was at its height. They were just worn out.
Yeah.
And they seen too much BS.
So
a lot of it.
Yeah.
What's your and I don't know if you're allowed to even talk this way, but who's your favorite guest or couple of your favorite?
That's like asking who your favorite kid is.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
We all have one. We just don't talk about it. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And it may change, as they get older.
Yeah, it depends on what age they are. How it changes.
But I like maybe a better way to phrase that. What's one you're like having a conversation? Like, I can't believe I'm having a conversation with this person.
That's happened a lot. Because there's just sometimes, I guess from a starstruck thing that Matthew McConaughey came on, that one was, for obvious reasons, I was nervous about.
Yeah.
Not because I was a fan, was a fan geek to him, and he's just a guy.
Yeah, but he's outside the realm of people you normally interview, definitely.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so I was nervous about that. So that was I can't believe I'm talking to, it just was weird. Not that I like, oh my God, Matthew McConaughey.
Right.
Yeah. But it was weird. God, there's so many, and I tell you, my favorite ones are always the ones I didn't expect.
Yeah.
The ones that I've been driving to him, or getting ready to go downstairs, or like, oh God, do I got to do this today? Because what is it? Why am I going to talk to this guy about?
Right.
Why did I say yes to this? I mean, those are things that have been gone through my head, and they turn out to be these wonderful, just value-packed conversations.
Yeah. And so that kind of leads into where we met, Richard. I produce the video portion of the Next Level Method podcast that I've mentioned on this podcast before. And Richard's a host with Matt Lilly is the other host. And Next Level Method is Matt started the company, and it's all about getting better about yourself, self-help, things you can do to make yourself better.
Yeah. Around the four core pillars of energy, elimination, like what are you eliminating out of your life? Relationships and purpose.
Yeah.
And so it's similar to Dose of Leadership, but it kind of goes down a different alley that's a little more niche. So you're going to find like an ideal guest would be like a Deepak Chopra or somebody.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily corporate related or business related. It's more life.
Right. Where I had, for example, I had General Stanley McChrystal on my show last week.
Yeah. He's
not going to fit in the Next Level Method.
Yeah.
But but some do. Like some of my guests do fit both, right? And I think that's why Matt reached out to me.
Yeah. But what you were saying earlier about I got to go downstairs and listen to this. Like we say that in the podcast studio when we're about getting ready to start, because sometimes we'll have somebody that's created this vitamin, right? And he's going to come on and talk about. And Richard's like, what are we going to talk about? Vitamins this whole time? Like, but then this person starts telling their backstory, and it's like where he came from. Like
fascinating.
He was this heart surgeon for 20 years that couldn't lose weight, and so he had this patient come in and he dropped this bag of vitamins on the table, and he's like, I've been taking this, and my heart's getting better, and I'm feeling better. Can you help me now? Because he was like on death's doorstep.
Yeah.
And he looked at it and was like,
Let me do some research here.
Change this whole mindset of, if it's worked for this guy, I need to research this.
Yeah.
And so he quit being a heart surgeon after like 30 something years, like one of the best in the country, and created this line of vitamins and went the whole organic kind of route with its patients. And now he's doing that.
So vitamins wasn't the subject. It was the story of how you got to
Exactly.
But Troy's heard me kind of complain about that, because I'm like, what? Because it's hard, because I hate just showing up. And I mean, because I do try to do a lot of research, and I do try to read every book. I'm not always successful, but I would probably say I'm 90% successful in reading. If a guy has a book or a gal has a book, I'll read it. If I can't read the whole thing, I'll read enough of it where
you're educated.
I'm not just showing up and I got these little, PR notes. I want to have a real conversation with these people.
Yeah.
And I was struggling with him because I'm like, what are we gonna, because it was all about his vitamins and everything else.
The plant paradox and all this stuff.
God, he's just gonna be plugging his stuff. I remember I was just kind of in a pissy mood, and then, but yeah, Troy's right. When we started, I should know after doing this for almost 9 years, like, I kind of had one this afternoon with a guy. I was like, and I picked it. I was like, something about this guy. I just wanted to talk to him, but it was all about sales and stuff like this. And I'm like, God, well, how boring it is. We just had this great conversation, right?
Yeah.
And then we even talked after it was over, we talked for 30 minutes, and who knows, right? And that's the power of the podcast, like having these conversations. You never know where it's going to lead,
Yeah, or what spark that your conversation with your guest is going to create in a listener's life. That's what's fascinating to me about it is we're always centric to what we're talking about or who we're talking to, and we know there's an audience.
Yeah,
but we just don't know how that's impacting them.
It's funny story about that. That happened to me, and you're right. I mean, it's like it's always a roller coaster, right? And I don't know how many years I was in. It wasn't that long, maybe 2-3 years into the show. And I was kind of at a low point. I'm like, why does anybody even listen? I could see the downloads, but I'm like, is anybody even listening to this? I'm not getting any emails. I'm not getting any clients.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, why do I, it's just, I'm kind of crying to the universe, throwing a little baby fit or whatever. And honest to God, like 2 hours later, I got an email, this really long email. And it was from a guy that was a manager of some, I think it was an ice cream pizza store in South Africa, in Cape Town,
Wow.
He's like, hey, I just want to let you know your show's changed my life. And I mean, I was really low and down and blah, 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 and this and that. And I listened to your show, and I've been an avid listener for the last 2.5 years and blah, blah, blah. And I became a manager of the store. And now every Thursday we shut the shop and we sit down and we order pizza and we listen to your show and talk about your show. And I'm like,
You got to be kidding me. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's these 4 or 5 people in South Africa that shut up their shop, order pizza, and they listen to my stupid butt.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rant and rave about leadership. But that's cool,
awesome.
right? Now, did that pay the light bill or get me a bag of groceries? No, but it certainly
Kept you
fueled
going.
my
Yeah.
emotional fuel tank.
It quit your tantrum.
Yeah.
Right.
God probably going, well, you just quit whining.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Get your belly aching.
Yeah.
What so you talked a little bit about coaching that you do. Is that one-on-one, or do you like meet with teams? Like how do you like leadership teams?
Yeah, all the above. I think, it morphed into, originally I was just doing keynotes. I thought it'd be so cool to go in and get out, and get a check and just
Yeah.
go on your way. And I would do that. And then every time I would do it, half the time they would go, hey, would you mind coaching me? Or can you coach my son? Or can you? And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And I'd never coached anybody. So I started doing one-on-one coaching, and it's not my favorite thing to do because it is so intensive. And I only coach guys. I don't coach women because it's too intimate. When I say intimate, not, but it's too personal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got some satisfaction out of that, but I got a lot to learn, and I'm still learning how to coach. And I finally got a coach to kind of teach me how to coach. That gave me some headway. But then what I really enjoy doing is kind of being just an overall consultant, or being an arrow in somebody's quiver for an organization, and kind of plug me wherever you need me in every aspect. I mean, and it's because there's not any really new dysfunctions in any organization. I mean, in the 3 or 4 that I've worked in here outside of the Marine Corps, and the ones that I've coached, I mean, they're all the same stuff, and it all goes around communication or lack thereof.
Yeah.
There's always a lot of egos involved. And that's kind of the power of the podcast, learning how these conversations, just learning is like, we're all dealing with the same trash. All of us at this table have limiting beliefs, self-doubt. You've said some negative self-talk about yourself today. In your line, if you didn't, and, fear never goes away. Uncertainty never goes away. There's no such thing as a fearless warrior. There's no such thing as an artist who, or a creator who isn't just petrified about putting their stuff out there.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just kind of tired of people trying to pretend, or people pretending that that's weakness, or there's something wrong with you because you're kind of faced with this fear or this resistance. And I'm just, come on, man, let's just get on with it.
And they let it hold them back.
Yeah. And again, going back to the Marine Corps, talking about them, they need to give me an affiliate check for promoting the Marine Corps for so much. But but I learned that, some great leaders that were saying is like, look, it's about being the composed force in a chaotic situation. It's not about creating a chaotic free environment. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Chaos is normal. Now, you do everything you can to try to make it chaos free, but a dragon's going to rear its ugly head, whether you like it or not, no matter how much detailed planning you do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that from the Marine Corps. And the Marine Corps said, you don't plan for perfection. You plan so you're prepared for resources allocation, and so that you're prepared when that unforeseen dragon does crop up.
Especially from being a pilot, right? I mean, there's so much training goes into when something's going to fail, and there's so much effort put into things not failing.
Well, and even more so, like I got, flying planes for sure. But for the infantry guys, even more, the guys that are on the ground, those small unit leaders that are down there, like I said, kicking down doors and taking names, what's the old adage? A plan never survives first contact with the enemy, right? And what's the other one? Like Mike Tyson said,
everybody has a plan until you get punched in the
face.
Yeah.
And it's what you do when you get punched in the face is what separates the kind of the winners from the losers. And maybe not winner losers is the best way to put it, but the people that kind of overcome and those that get defeated.
Yeah.
And I believe that wholeheartedly. And I think it's a professional knows. The amateur thinks fear has to be overcome. And the professional knows that fear can't be overcome, right? It can only be quelched by taking action. And that is 100% what the Marine Corps taught me. I think I would have gone into it in the mindset of the Marine Corps going for that was like, oh yeah, there's something wrong for me that I'm afraid. Nah, there's always going to be a fire. Fire can be a good thing. It can keep you warm, And if I can be if I can spend my limited time, energy, and resources, which we all have, and particularly the Marine Corps had, of all of them, very limited energy and resources for sure. But if you can be the composed force inside that chaotic situation, that's frightening to the enemy. And let the fire be all around me, and I'm going to be the composed. I'm just going to stand there and look at it and I'm not going to let it lick my boot or catch my pants on fire.
Yeah.
But I see organizations and people trying to put all the fires out because fire bad, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a waste of time.
Yeah.
And flying, the same thing. I have a detailed flight plan. When I go from here to Paris, I got a flight plan that's 6 pages long with 85 waypoints on it. And each of those 85 waypoints has some detailed, like the exact time I'm supposed to hit it, the exact amount of gas I'm supposed to hit it. And I don't gauge my success on hitting each of those 85 waypoints. I check every time I do it to see how I'm doing.
Right.
How am I doing on my plan? But corporations are what I see amateurs doing is they celebrate each one of those. Nah, the Marine Corps taught me I celebrate what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And that's trying to get all those warm pink and brown bodies that are in that tube back there to make sure that they're pink and brown. They're still warm when we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the tube's not bent. Right. Or broken. That's the objective. And so you're never working the plan. Again, this is all Marine Corps stuff. It's not about working the plan. It's about working the objective.
Yeah.
And I took that in the corporate arena and applied that. And again, I'm not the smartest guy.
Yeah.
But I would talk like that, and people would be like,
"Where's this coming from?"
Right. No, we have to meet every month, and then they have to show us charts that have red, yellow, or green, and then we're going to yell at everybody that has red next to their name.
KPIs.
Yeah.
You come to me and talk about KPIs again, I'll kick your teeth in. I hate, there should only be 3 KPIs, If we do what we say we're going to do, are we making money?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know what the third one is.
Yeah. It should be a small list, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
But right? I mean, I don't know. Does that make sense what I'm saying, guys? I mean,
oh yeah,
it does, and it seems to me that I was in the Fortune 100 company for 20 years, and I saw that ebb and flow from a corporate culture perspective on. Yeah, we're gonna unfetter you and let you do your thing, and here's the thing that you need to go accomplish. Down to, okay, we're gonna meet every 2 weeks, and there's gonna be this matrix, and you're gonna report out on that, and then we're gonna argue over what color.
Oh, I'm getting PTSD. You talking like that?
But it's and that happens, and it's funny because it typically changes with leadership. And I say leadership in people in positions of authority, not
the positional leadership.
Yeah. That it's like, and my dad was in the Air Force for 26 years, and he said, every new base commander that comes here is going to change paint color.
Yeah,
right. They've got to leave because
they got to leave their mark.
They've got to leave a mark, so something's got to be different, And I kind of experienced that in a different way. Yeah.
And I don't think we should accept that because I get it. What gets me excited, and I've seen this in the Marine Corps, and I've seen it in the corporate arena. I like those hidden leaders that nobody knows or sees. I like the medal. I've been trying to find this name, this Medal of Honor citation in Vietnam. This guy, he was the cook, right? He was a cook, went to the Marine Corps. He was a cook. And whatever, their base camp got overrun or whatever, and everyone's getting annihilated. The cook comes out there, gets his, grabs a machine gun with all these dead bodies around him, and he's just like, and they're trying to evacuate. He's like, no, you go. The cook, Boom, leg gets blown off, tourniquet sticks the stump in the dirt. Keep going, I'm fine.
Yeah.
15 guys get evacuated, this, that, and they come back to him. He's slumped over, he's dead,
Yeah.
Those are the guys, like the cook, the
Right.
introverted cook that never talked to anybody,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you can, that's kind of an extreme example, but those type of people exist in your organizations, right? And they get overlooked. And so I get excited trying to find those, and they don't even know they're leaders. Like maybe that cook didn't even know he had it until that kind of crisis event presented itself to
Right.
him, He maybe thought, oh, what the hell, I'm just a cook,
Yeah.
But there are guys and gals like that in your organization, and if you can find them, that's when the real magic, I think, happens in an organization. You see it. The spot welder, the example I gave you, the guy that comes up with the new process that saves, 2 minutes in the manufacturing time, and it saves this many X $1,000 when you extrapolate it out. That gets me excited, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't give a flip about this guy that just came from, the McKinsey group, and now he's our COO and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. Go away.
Yeah.
Nothing against McKinsey, but we've all worked for those type of guys, right? You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And
I'm sitting next to one of them right now.
So what advice, and I know we're running along here.
Running along here, but that's all right.
What advice would you have if there's somebody that feels that they're that person? Like what would you say, hey, this is the next step that you could take to try to come out of that shell? Because I'm sure you get a lot of people that tune into what you do.
Yeah, there's a lot. And in fact, I would think that's a vast majority of my audience, people that are kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's really one of the toughest places to be in an organization, because you got the McKinsey CEO kind of like the wonder kid coming down here, with
right.
the new processes and the new KPIs, and maybe you're responsible for a handful of people. So that's a challenge. And then you've got, which I think is the hardest, you got 6 or 7 of your peers of the same level. You got to coordinate with them and all oh my God,
Yeah.
It's a very tough thing to do. And you got to lead up, you got to lead down, and you got to lead across. It's very challenging, and it's frustrating because you're stuck in the middle. You feel like no one's listening to you. And it's kind of like the analogy I give, someone on D-Day, that young lieutenant that's in that Higgins boat getting ready to storm the beach in Normandy, and he's been in England for 13 months training for this big event. No one's listening to him. He's telling his commanding officers, like, sir, I think we're going to need cold weather gear. I think, no, we're going to be home by Christmas. We're going to be in Berlin by Christmas. We don't need cold weather gear. I don't know, sir. I just think, he's thinking about his wife that he hadn't seen for a year, the new baby that he's never seen but through pictures. And he's thinking about dying. He's thinking about all this stuff, right? All these things he can't control.
Yeah.
Right? He's pissed off at Hitler. He's probably going to die. He's in this boat. He's scared. And he's thinking about all these things. And while he's doing that, there's 25, guys around him.
Yeah.
This guy's got his shoes untied. This guy's like, puking, and he's scared. And he's like, I can't control any of that other stuff. And as leaders, when you think about leadership, leaders want to do big things.
Yeah.
And so my advice for those people is just to lead where you're at and find those opportunities, because just like that guy in that Higgins boat, he's got 25 opportunities to make an impact. And sometimes it doesn't have to be it's just like,
it's not going to be on a stage. It may just be when you're shoulder to shoulder with somebody.
And it's like, hey man, your shoes untied. He's like, and you kind of look at a guy and you just give him a nod or give him a wink, and you're like, hey man, we'll be all right. Even though you feel like you're petrified.
Yeah.
But you just do those little things. So there's little opportunities to lead. Any interaction with another human being is an opportunity for leadership development and growth. And that's what I think a lot of those people in the middle want to do. And I think just when you find something that needs to be changed in the organization, again, it's not your right to challenge, it's your obligation, right? Just like if we're flying a plane, that's how we fly airplanes. That's why airplane is so safe that it is. It's like a lot of people think it's technology and all that other stuff, but it's really because the mindset that we have inside that cockpit, flying at that professional level, is I don't care if you're a jerk, I don't care if you're the best pilot since Chuck Yeager, or I don't care if you're the dumbest pilot, that's ever walked the earth, whatever. We may like each other, or we may be drinking buddies, or we may hate each other. I'm not going to let you crash in the mountain. I'm not going to let you land with your gear up, and I'm not going to let you run out of fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how the people in the organizations have to look at it. And so if you see something that's about to crash the business in the proverbial mountain, it's not your right to challenge, it's your obligation. And you just be steadfast. You do it with respect, right? And you don't do it. And so that's That's how you start to make an impact. You have way more influence than you think. I think the middle and below has way more influence. I mean, you think about that. I mean, think about in the Marine Corps, it's like if I was the commanding officer and then there's this brand new PFC, coming from the fleet, and he's in a fire team of 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a squad leader that he's in charge of. Who has more influence over that brand new PFC, that squad leader or me as the commanding officer in there? On a day-to-day basis, who has more influence on how this guy's day is going to end up being?
It's a squad
It's
leader.
the squad leader
for sure.
And that's what people forget when they're in leadership roles, or even if they don't even have one,
Yeah.
And the squad leader who isn't responsible, or the fire team member who doesn't have anybody who's above him, he has influence on those other 3 members more than I do as the commanding officer. And I think that's what people don't realize. You have way more influence than you realize. So
So start where you are right now. Like
just lead where you're at.
Yeah.
Lead where you're at.
Don't wait for
and
some
start
other.
with yourself too. I mean, do what you say you're going to do and set the example, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another way to say that.
Don't talk about it. Be about it.
That's right.
That's right. Well, Richard, man, we got a little long here, but that's
sorry,
all right. No,
I talked
it's
too
all
much.
been awesome. Good stuff, man. It's been really good stuff. We appreciate you coming on the show.
And you're going to stick around and participate in our top 3 right after this break, right?
That's right.
1783, the first victory. Victorious in war, this year sees America earn her independence. At Admiral's Pennant, we celebrate victories at the end of war. 1783 is the first of many such celebrations in our nation's history. This is an elegantly refined blend of sandalwood, cedar, and tea tree. The subtle, lingering, woody scent of the sandalwood, light cedar, and the top notes of tea tree is the essence of masculinity, honoring the men who fought and continue to fight to provide us our independence.
Check it out at admiralspennant.com. Without it, you might as well shave.
And we're back.
All right. Top 3 things you would tell your younger self. Matt, I think you ought to go first because your younger self needs some help.
It probably does.
I know mine does.
We all know yours does.
Yeah.
Based on stories that we've heard.
Yeah.
I would say number 3 would be don't jump on bandwagons because the classics never die.
Ooh, I like that.
That's good stuff.
People, I guess we're trying not to draw this out, but screw you guys on. I just think everybody gets so wrapped up on the latest new thing that comes out, and they end up wasting money on it or whatever it is, and ends up, the old jeans and a t-shirt never goes away. That will always be classic, And I got in trouble for saying that for some, as something as simple as some prom attire on some of these new kids a while back.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the parents got really upset at me for kind of making fun of their child's outfit. And I'm like, I mean, come on. It's just an outfit. We're having fun, but the classics do never die. I mean, these high waters and stuff, whatever. So anyway, don't jump on bandwagons. Number 2 would be to invest sooner.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
I didn't understand anything about it until actually in the Marine Corps, they make you start investing. And with the, what is that called?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
The equivalent of a 401k?
Not really, but kinda. But they give you this and they say, okay, this H fund, J fund, whatever, and you don't really understand anything about it because you've got a first sergeant that's telling you that what to do, and he doesn't understand it either. And so if I'd have understood that a little bit more back then, I could have taken more of my money and invested it a lot more wisely.
Yeah.
And of course, we didn't have apps like Robinhood or anything like that back in the day, but those have made it so much easier to invest and be a more knowledgeable investor yourself, because you find the things that you were interested in and that you like, and that you can kind of see what they're doing. And I think I should have just invested a lot sooner, because I'd have a way more money than I do now.
Yeah.
And then number 1,
And you're loaded now. Just think about how much more loaded you would be.
shoot, if I was loaded now, boy, we'd have a real podcast studio.
Wait, on the break earlier, weren't you about to buy a truck
Yeah.
or something?
Hey,
Yeah.
well,
Come on, man. Come on.
$8,800. I mean,
Come on, Ted.
53 F1. It's a pretty truck. But number one would be to go with your gut. Listen to that gut instinct. Almost, I mean, if it's not 95% of the time or better, it's got to be somewhere in there. Your gut is pretty much always right. And I can look back at both IED instances that I was in, and my gut told me to do something else, and I didn't listen to it. And it was just a split-second decision where it was like, and then I just went and paid for it both times. But that's happened outside of the Marine Corps. When you get a gut feel, and it could be about a person, it could be about a business deal. You're like, man, this sounds really good. I mean, I like where this could go, but my gut just tells me that this isn't right.
Yeah.
And so, number one would be
those are two good.
Go with your gut.
That intuitive thing is way
It's powerful,
more deeper than we give it credit for. All that evolution. Like, hey, there's a saber-toothed tiger behind me.
Yeah.
That's embedded in you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with you. We see that in flying a lot, aviation. You see that a lot. I can tell you how many times you're like, wait, something ain't right here.
Yeah.
And we're taught to stop. And 9 times out of 10, something switches out of place or something. But
yeah.
it's there, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Chet, what you
Good
got?
job, Matt. All right. Number 3, go to class winter quarter of 1995.
These are specifics.
This one is very specific.
Love it.
We talked about in a previous podcast the video games I was playing in college.
Oh, yeah, that's right. When your buddy did
the network, the computers
Yeah.
before there was networking and
Right.
gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That was that quarter?
That quarter had a lasting impact on a lot of the way the rest of my college career worked out. It worked out, but it was a lot more difficult because of that. So number 2, don't focus so much on the short term. Like the younger I was, it was all about what's in the here and now. We kind of talked about this earlier. Of I'm taking all these short metrics and not looking at long term. Spend more time thinking about the long term, planning for the long term, executing for the long term, and not just thinking about what's going on right now. And then number 1, I would tell myself, you don't know as much as you think you know.
Yeah.
And because of that, you should be very curious. You should be in an information gathering mode.
That's a good one.
I can't fault my son for being this way, but I've got a 17-year-old in the house right now, and there's so much confidence in that he displays in what he thinks he knows, and I'm looking at it like, there's so much you don't know. But then again, I was, into my 30s before I realized, man, I really don't know as much as I think I do. And because of that, I was able to think about everything, every decision, how this is going to impact. It opens your eyes, and then you're like, you're asking more questions. You're leaning on your gut more. Is this the right thing to do? Is this this may have a different impact than I want it to, and kind of ties into number 2 as well. But if I would, and if somebody told me when I was younger that I don't know as much as thinking, I wouldn't have listened to them, right? But maybe if it's me telling my younger self, I'd listen to me.
And that's that goes with all 3 of mine.
Yeah, hopefully.
Well, definitely one of mine for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right.
Do you want me to go next?
Sure.
All right, number 3, go buy all the original Star Wars characters and keep them in mint condition in a vault somewhere.
As long as somebody didn't run them over with a car.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, those are my G.I. Joes. Have my Star Wars stuff somewhere else.
Yeah.
But yeah, go buy those because you're going to enjoy that with your kids later on in life and maybe make some money.
So you're not talking like from a collector's perspective? Because if you're telling yourself to buy something, to buy Apple stock.
Well, Well, of course, yeah. But no, I would from a collector's perspective, I wouldn't play with them now with my kids. I'd show them off and then put them right back in the vault. So, second, number 2 gets a little more serious, and I would say do not marry her. Yeah. I was married before my wife now, and it was one of the worst decisions I probably made in my life. Learned a lot from it, but
were there people telling you that?
No. But after the fact, I had people tell me,
I knew it wasn't going to work out.
yes, that was what people were telling me. I was like, and I asked one of my really close friends that I worked with, like, why didn't anybody tell me? And he said, you wouldn't have listened to us anyway.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you're probably right.
Yeah.
But maybe, like you said, Chet, maybe I would have listened to my older self. Who knows? Maybe. And then number 1, dude, just listen to your parents. Because I never listened to my parents. And they were speaking truth and life into me and giving me really good information that would have helped me out earlier in my life.
Yeah.
But I was that rebel kid, and like, you're not going to tell me what to do.
Right.
So, yeah, dude, just shut up and listen to your parents. Because they have in mind what is best for you. So listen.
Yeah.
All right, Richard.
So,
The investment one was that was, I think, going to be my number 3. Was you said that a close number 3 for me would be that there's adding value is the key to influence. And anytime, if I would have known that, like I think about how painful middle school was, and how you just whatever didn't fit in, and it's just such a cruel place, right? But if you could have been the kid starting then, like if you're 12, 13, you're like, you know what I'm going to do? Even if this guy's being a bully, this guy's kind of a jerk to this, or this person doesn't like me. It's like, what can I do to add value to this person's life? Right?
Yeah.
And then you're not worried about yourself, which is hard to do when you're going through puberty and all that other stuff, right? But
yeah.
I think that would have been huge, right? How different, like your whole high school experience could have been, all that other stuff. You say, my job is to add value to other people. I guess I would just, most of us as teenagers, you're just so wrapped up in yourself, right?
Right.
The second one, we kind of talked a little bit about it there, is understanding, and I learned this really from the podcast. It was kind of my doing the podcast, biggest aha moment is that the fear and uncertainty never goes away. Tied into that limiting beliefs are just kind of normal for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
When Steve Forbes told me on the show, when I asked him, I said, when did the confidence really go? When did the imposter syndrome kind of go away? And he laughed at me. He says, it never goes away.
Yeah.
He goes, I was in the shower yesterday morning, he said, and if people would have known how unprepared I was for this deal that I was really wanting to get, they would,
Yeah.
I had to fake my way through it. And I'm like, wow. The only difference between me and Steve Forbes are the zeros in our bank account.
Right.
So that was it was refreshing on one hand for me. I was like, if I would have known that,
Yeah.
that this, anytime you see dysfunction, bullying, or people, egotistical or pounding the chest, or all that dysfunction that we deal with on a daily basis, it's coming from a place of lack and insecurity. You know? If I would have known, always telling that to my kids, and they like, you just don't get it, Dad. And I'm like, no, I do get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so that I wish I would have known that and believed that then. And then the last one is the big lie. And I think that and it's around self-worth. I think that if our self-worth, and this is the biggest lie of all, I wish I would have known this, and that our self-worth, we think it's based on what we accomplish and what other people think of us. You know? And I think that lie is the bane of so much despair and unhappiness, adultery, web surfing, pornography, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's because we if that is what you get your self-worth and your validation from, you're setting yourself up for failure. And it's kind of like, I wanted you to know I was a Marine Corps officer. I wanted you to know that I was a pilot because I said I am, right?
Yeah,
and then when it was taken away from me from the 9/11 and this and that, and I had to reinvent myself, I remember it was like, and you got this validation from that, from you being impressed that I was a Marine, I'm not a Marine Corps. That's just what I did. That's the role that I played at this certain time, right?
Yeah.
Just like your identity isn't really a father, you play the role of a father, right? It doesn't diminish the role, but you can't identify yourself as that, because what happens when you're no longer a father? You see this in mothers all the time, right? When they kids get too old.
Empty nest, yeah.
And so that, I think, is, so you got to get your validation somewhere else, and that's self-validation through, I think, through spirituality or whatever. I don't care what you do. Hug a tree, talk to Buddha, talk to God, get saved. I don't care. But you got to have some other form of validation except from, this is what I've done and this is what other people think of me.
Yeah.
And I think that's what 99% of the world is on that hamster wheel, right?
Yeah.
Because that leads to consumerism, that leads to keeping up with the Joneses, it keeps whatever, right? So that's my number one.
Man, fantastic. Indeed.
Dig it. Yeah, all 12 of those I could teach to my kids.
We basically have the outline for a book we could all co-write now.
Here we go.
It's a chapter for each one.
Yeah, let's do it.
No, I'm just kidding with that. I'm going to move into a good word, and then we'll close this out. And this is something that I wouldn't, I kind of thought about this along the lines of what we would tell our younger selves, but I actually think this is something that I've done well most of my life. I don't know why, but the word is Sabbath. And if you look back in the Genesis creation in the Bible, and God's going through all of the creating of things, and on the seventh day, and this is Genesis 2, on the seventh day, God ended his work, which he had done. He rested on the seventh day for everything he had done. He blessed the seventh day and sanctified it because he rested for all of his work, all the things that he had created and made. So then you think about like what we want to do, what we want to accomplish, all these things. And if you look at most everybody's life, it's full and there's no rest. There's no Sabbath, if you will. There's no work hard and you need to take a break from working hard and take care of yourself. And, I was looking through a few things and I found an article on Inc.com that was pretty interesting. And there's scientific backing for every one of these principles that they were talking about on Rhett Power was the guy that wrote the article. But, 10 things that rest is known to do scientifically. And his context is taking a break from work. Don't make your career a 7-day-a-week career. Like you can't work that hard and still be as successful as you could be if you didn't rest. So time off from work reduces stress, and through all the metrics. And he has a bunch of stuff in there that kind of backs all of these things. Completely divesting yourself from work actually reduces inflammation and the risk of heart disease. So not being so focused on all of the labor, the thought, the stress that comes with that actually makes you measurably healthier. Getting away from work boosts your immune system. And this actually, some of the data that he uses here goes into people that work out, and working out 7 days a week is actually not healthy for you, that you need, your body needs to recover. Same goes from a mental aspect as well. Some sleep studies have been done and found that you typically sleep better on your down days. So if you take a Sabbath day, the rest that you get that night is actually better rest than you get during the work week. Number 5 here, active time off adds years to your life. So if you're at a desk job all day, stressed out, phone calls, emails, all this stuff, and then your Sabbath day, you go out in nature, take a walk, spend some time with your pets, or go pick up a softball game or something like that, actually has been known to help you live longer. Number 6, regular time off restores mental energy. 7, your creativity improves with time off, where you're not focused on the same thing all the time. Number 8, it improves your productivity when you do work. I've noticed this from a vacation perspective that and I took, it was about 5 years ago was the first time that I decided I wasn't that important and I actually could take 2 weeks off of work in one chunk and spend a long vacation with my family in the summertime, that I came back so refreshed and so excited about going and getting the next thing and getting that project done, that if you were to take like that quarter, I typically got more stuff done in that quarter that I took 2 weeks off than I would in a quarter where I didn't take any vacation. Which I've experienced that and not with some of the stuff that they were talking about in the article as well. Your focus at work improves. So when you're not consumed with it 7 days a week, you actually take some time off. Your focus is stronger when you are wanting to focus on your work, and your short-term memory improves as well when you're not just constantly thinking about the same thing. So taking some time off, resting, thinking about nothing, watching a show about nothing, maybe Seinfeld, thinking about nothing.
There it is.
Yes, I got to bring it up. You actually improve your short-term memory. So he goes into detail in his article about, the scientific backing behind all of those comments. But I think it's fantastic. And the good word would be, if you find yourself that you are not taking time off, you're really not taking care of yourself. And there's no good reason to stay in that state. It's not helping you be more productive. It's not helping you be more creative. It's not helping you live longer. It's not helping your stress. It's not helping your sleep. So take the example that we saw from God in Genesis and take a day off, and you ought to be doing it at least once a week.
Yeah, the hustle grind mentality is kind of a bad myth, destructive myth,
Yeah.
And even if there are times we're all going to have to hustle and grind.
Yeah, but you can't do it.
You can't
It's not
sustain
sustainable.
it. Yeah.
Well, even when I was few months ago, took a month off because I had COVID, right?
Yeah.
And then 3 weeks being sick, and then the week after, and then you go for like a post checkup. My blood pressure was regulated. Didn't feel any stress, because I've just been resting.
Yeah.
In recovery, and I couldn't believe it because I normally have like little anxiety, have high blood pressure that I've been taking medicine for about a year. Like all that stuff kind of went away.
Yeah.
Because I've been resting. Kind of took a little mini COVID vacation that I never want to do again.
Yeah. Vacation. Let's just drop the COVID.
Yeah.
Keep the vacation.
All right. Well, Richard, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been great.
Fun.
And go ahead.
I was going to say, I talk so much because I'm always asking the questions. So
Yeah. Get to receive some of them this go around.
Hope I didn't go too long.
So if people want to find you, they're going to go to
doseofleadership.com is the best place.
Yeah.
They'll have all that there. And then Next Level Methods, a new venture that me and Troy met. And so that's up and coming. And so those are the two main things that I'm pushing right now.
And you can find those on any podcast platform.
Yeah, all the podcast platforms.
Yeah, websites, nextlevelmethod.com, doseofleadership.com.
Yeah, that'll steer you to all the places in your favorite podcast applications.
Yeah, and well over 9 chances out of 10, if you're going to go tune into a podcast today, you're not going to listen to one that's been around as long and as established as yours. So kudos and congratulations, early congratulations on 500 episodes coming around on Dose of Leadership, and that's just amazing. And again, the content you put out there is just fantastic.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And because it's a grind, like I said, sometimes it can be lonely, and not knowing, but it's so much fun. It's my favorite thing to do is to have the conversations.
Yeah. When we were looking at getting into this, one of the things that I had read by people that have been podcasting a long time is like, this is of all the things I've ever done, like career, this is the one with the least amount of feedback, positive or negative. It's just the least. You're putting it out there and you just don't know.
You don't know. And you can see the downloads, but sometimes, and that's what, and I hate the guys that are selling this podcast thing of like, oh, it's a great way to make money. It can be, but it's not a get rich quick scheme at all. But the power of the podcast goes way beyond that. My life has been so enriched, beyond measure, primarily because of the relationships that I've made. There's no faster way, I think, to build a network or establish relationships than do a podcast, because how else could I have talked to Steve Forbes? I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
If you're a sales guy trying to make a pitch to Forbes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not getting. He's not going to be your audience. Yeah.
Right.
But if you have a podcast and he wants to have a talk with you, then okay. I'm not his drinking buddy, but I do have his number in my cell phone.
Yeah.
I might pull out an emergency the next zombie apocalypse.
Right.
Right.
Hey, buddy.
Steve.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve.
Remember me? I helped launch your career.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we just can't thank you enough for being on with us.
Thanks for inviting me. It was really fun.
Yeah. Sweet.
All right. Matt, you going to take us home?
You got it.
Oh, just with the music. You don't do the words. Troy.
All right. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Hardheaded Podcast. You can find us on Apple or Spotify or any of your podcast applications. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe on YouTube, all those things. And please go rate and review us. And if you'll go to hardheadedpodcast.com, you can go get you some merchandise. See how I said that, the whole word for you guys?
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You're welcome. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.
Got to the drop on time.
I didn't interrupt it for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.